like I said, if you have an encounter, raise your hand and we'll let you speak about it. No one will laugh about it unless it's absolutely funny the way it happened. I mean, you know, well, we're not going to laugh because we think you're crazy or anything. It's just if you tell a funny encounter, people are going to laugh.
But if you want to laugh at us, that's fine.
You wouldn't be the first.
No.
Is that light in your eyes, Jim? A little, but not bad.
So.
I can fix the problem.
And of course, you know, like I said, if you've had an encounter, we'd like to get you to fill out a sighting report. So with that being said, I was talking to a young lady during lunch, and I told her I was going to talk about a second encounter I had. I'd like to talk about what has been called the 8 Parade. Now, we had been researching up in a bunch of woods up by Chelsea, Oklahoma, and Big Jim, he's been there several times, and it was a very high concentrated place where a lot of Bigfoot activity happened. And so one of the first expeditions we had, it was me and another researcher, and he brought his daughter with him, first time she ever been out. So what we did is we backed my Blazer up into the tree line, and we run cameras out from the Blazer and hooked it up to a DVR inside, and out in the field in front of us we put a little Honda generator to power it off. And since I'd be turning on the screen of the DVR to see what was going on, we put blankets around the windows. So I'm sitting there and I put my parabolic on the back of the track, or the Blazer, and pointed it down in the woods. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I start to hear footsteps coming up behind the Blazer. And I'm like, what the crap? And it stops right behind the Blazer. A couple of minutes later, here comes another one walking right up behind the Blazer. Stops right behind it. Then a third one. So I've got 3 somethings standing behind my Blazer. So I'm sitting there thinking, man, I don't know what I'm going to do here. You know, I got 3 possible Bigfoot. And then all of a sudden, it sounds like someone takes a thumbnail and taps the bowl of my parabolic. And of course, that sounds like a shotgun going off in my head. So I get my pistol and I get my camcorder. I'm like, I don't know which one I'm going to do if it comes around, but I'm going to do something. And as I'm sitting there waiting for one of them to come around, in the field in front of me, I see 4 shadows going across the field. And I look, and it looks like big hogs or small cows going across the field. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, there is wildlife out here. Well, they get to the tree line, and they stand up on 2 feet and walk in. My mouth drops. I'm like, what the heck did I just see? So I sit there a little bit longer. Another group comes across, and they're in 4x4 mode. They're all on all fours. They get to the same spot in the tree line. They stand up, walk in on 2 feet. So by this time, I'm like, holy cow. And the other researcher, he's on the other end of this field in this little trailer hooked up to his 4-wheeler, and he's getting rocks thrown at him at the same time. So I'm sitting there just totally freaking out. And then the third group comes walking across the field in 4x4 mode, gets to the same spot, stands up, walks in. And we had our cameras down in the woods, but they had actually went down along the creek, and I could hear them in the parabolic as they were walking behind us. Then the 3 behind me, one at a time, walked back down into the woods. I'm sitting there thinking, I ain't getting out till daylight. So the next morning, it started raining. I fell asleep about 5 o'clock because I couldn't stay awake any longer. The other researcher come up, dropped off the little 4-wheeler and the trailer, jumped in his truck and went on up to where his camper was. And I woke up, I seen the 4-wheeler there. I was like, holy cow, I gotta get up there and get him and tell him what happened. So I went up there, and when we come back down, we started looking behind the Blazer where they'd been standing. They had been kind of moving their feet enough. It made a big old mud hole where they had been standing. And we had left one of those toy pinwheels by the passenger back tire of my Blazer when we turned in that night. It was moved behind the Blazer. Apparently they were playing with it while they were standing there. We walked over to where they had stood up and walked in, and you could see the grass had been trodden down where they had walked in. So that was the A parade. That was probably the only other time since the four-wheeler got picked up that I've had a scary incident happen with Bigfoot. And it was because I had approximately 15 Bigfoot basically surrounding me in my Blazer, and my pistol only held 9 rounds, and the camcorder wasn't going to do me no good if they wanted to yank me out. But the way I felt, the 3 that were standing behind the Blazer was standing there to make sure I didn't get out and try to do anything to the troop as it come across. So,
Where was this at?
up by Chelsea, Oklahoma. Claremore.
Was that by either one of the lakes, the old lake or the new one?
It's actually on the Spencer Creek watershed of Lake Ooligot. So, needless to say, it took about a year before I'd go back into that field, and we started having more and more expeditions, and more of our guys went in there, and there was plenty of encounters that happened up there. Okay. The boss lady just come and handed me a note that said, half-price hamburgers, chili, and nachos. So,
Sure, you make me sit up here during that.
well, put your order in and she'll hold it back. So, I want to tell that story because, like I said, I was talking to the young lady and I told her I would cover that. So, I'd like to start off, everybody that was here yesterday knows Jim Whitehead. His screen name is Big Jim. You know, I don't think he's that big, but then of course Randy Savig, he goes by Rebellistic. Now we have what we call screen names, and it's because we have so many Randys, we have so many Jims, we got so many Daves that, you know, when you're hollering on the radio with somebody, you say Dave and 5 people answer, you know, so we do screen names. It's basically call signs when we're out in the woods. Mine's Darkwing. It's because when I worked several jobs, whenever something dangerous happened, they say, go get DW. You know, he'll get dangerous. So I've stuck with that name. Rebellistic because, well,
I don't follow rules.
yeah. And like I said, Big Jim, you know, we got Dave over there, a Squatch Finder. We got Roy, who's Bushman. And funny story about Bushman, we got to say this. For the longest time, we thought he was talking about like a Bushman from Australia, you know, go out in the bush. Well, about 6 or 7 years ago, he broke the news to us. It was like, no, Bushman as in Bush beer. Needless to say, that we had to chuckle about that. But I'm going to go ahead and let Big Jim kind of introduce himself and, you know, say a few things, and then we'll let Randy say a few things, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience.
Well, I'm not technologically compatible. For those of you that weren't here yesterday, I am Big Jim. I am the Western Oklahoma State Director. I am the crazy lunatic out west doing things that probably should not be done in the field, and getting some interesting results in that process. The running joke in the Western team is the guys over here in the eastern part of the state, they get responses by trying to provoke interactions. I get responses by pissing them off. So I am also sort of a pseudo-scientific advisor for the group. I'm got some training in biology, a couple of degrees in natural science and biology. Anyway, I'm the cast guy, I'm the footprint guy. So we'll hand this off to Rebel.
Well, again, I'm Randy Savig. I'm the Missouri State Director for the MABRC. And like these guys, you know, got into this stuff. You know, I play by my own rules. You know, one of the big things that we talk about in the NABRC is think outside of the box. You know, and the more we do that, the more we can learn. My niche has been audio. I don't walk so doggone good, so I can't go drunk in the woods like I used to. But I do a lot of comparative work with known animals, the unknown sounds, not only of my own, but I'll take on recordings from other people in the group and even outside of the group at times to try to help them figure out what's going on. This has been a neat ride. I mean, when I first joined this back in 2011, you know, I've pretty much been a loner all my life. I wasn't a joiner, and again, I started talking with these people on the MABRC forums, and they were my type of guy. And that's when I finally decided I'd join up with them and take what I knew and expand my abilities in the woods looking for these, using the group aspect. Anybody that is looking into doing some research, you know, there's really nothing wrong with doing it by yourself, but the learning curve is going to be so much slower if you do it by yourself. Getting involved in a good, down-to-earth group, you got people you can feed ideas off. I mean, I've sat around a campfire with these guys numerous times, and some of the times, some of the stuff we talk about, it clicks with Jim when I say something, or it'll click when Darren says something with me. Hey, that's what I'm seeing out there. That's what I'm experiencing out there. And that's why I think as the group as a whole, when we can get everybody together and we hit the woods with it, we can collect the best evidence possible because we've got all these little niches in there. Again, Jim with his tracking ability. I'm worthless at tracking. I grew up in northern Minnesota. I tracked deer, yeah, in snow. I mean, it's easy to do it there, but as far as in these sticks and timbers of the Ozarks, I'm lost. I've seen a couple partial tracks, I think. I have yet to cast my own, but I'm going to get Jim one day. Even if I got to bring him up to Missouri, I'm going to get a Missouri cast. That's all there is to it. You know, Darren's close enough, a couple hours apart. He's had some stuff happen out there, and I've joined them out there when I can. And I mean, we get his thermal, we get the audio set up, we get other people out there. You know, Compressor Mike is one crazy guy that could take out there too, because he'll go where nobody wants to go. Those are the things
Let me
that...
insert this. That's another rule. You don't follow Compressor Mike on forward.
Yeah, because again, there's been accidents, rollovers or whatever. I mean, we had one guy, we told him that. 20 minutes later, he followed Mike and he rolled his machine. But, you know, we put the best of the best out there. And the only reason why we work so good together is we've done this together. I know what Darren, for the most part, is thinking when we're out in the woods doing what we do. I know what Jim is thinking because I've worked around him. If Jim says, hey, look at this, it's not something that he's suspecting. This is something that's serious. Now, what is it? This, that, and the other thing. And as a group, it works real good for collecting evidence. And that is, as a group whole, the thing that we're most interested in, is collecting evidence. The more evidence we can put out there, the better chance we can have of proving the existence of Bigfoot. You know, I rely on Jim a lot. I mean, I've spent some camp time with him that I can throw stuff across from him, a different perspective than Darren, and I've got two people now with more knowledge than I got that can say, hey, this could be what's going on. And it has really helped me expand my research so much more than if I would have just been doing it on my own. And again, thanks everybody. This has been a heck of a good weekend. I'm glad that we've had the turnout we've had.
Okay, folks, you know, earlier I was talking about the markers and how Rebelistic noticed that there was an odd smell. I'd like to turn it back over to him just to explain that, so to follow up what I said earlier.
Okay, no problem.
I wasn't responsible for the odd smells.
Not that time. Well, again, we've got the one, like I'm sure he talked about, a member that has trained dogs a lot. And it just came up one day, and I've been running an expedition up in Missouri, and I was out in the woods with a bunch of new people showing them what we look for. I do know there's one distinct tall boy trail in that area, and we started following it. The tall boy trail is basically a game trail that there's no branches 8-9 foot up, where a guy my size could walk through the thickest of brush and never get touched in the face by a stick.
I need to go there.
And they seem to just feel where they walk through. That, again, Jim tells me, I ain't found it yet, but Jim tells me that's the best place to find tracks and stuff. And I believe Jim, he's done it. But we were on that tall boy trail, and we were just walking around. There were some bows there that were possibles, this and that. And I just happened to stop, and all of a sudden I got a whiff. And it was, I don't want to say urine, but it wasn't a sweet smell. It was strong. It wasn't the wet dog that I smelt before that's indicative to them being around, but I smelled something very musky, I guess is the way I should put it. And after talking with Darren and discussing that with the other member and stuff, I looked up, and right above me was a pointer that had been laid up in some trees. And it was high enough, I had to use my walking stick to touch it. So it wasn't like it was 6 foot, 7 foot, this was 10.5 foot in the air. But if that wouldn't have come up, that there was possibly scenting these marker areas, because why would a critter look up at night? I was lucky enough during that time frame, I was wearing the GoPro on that entire hike. And again, the only time during that hike that I looked up was when I looked up and found that marker. So again, I got the video of the process happening, which was different. I'm usually not that prepared. But yeah, there definitely seems to be a correlation, and that's something that as a group, we definitely need to continue to investigate.
Are you saying that the
No, this was actually a marker that they set up a stick. It almost looks horizontal. If you look at a road sign on, that's what it looks like. It looks like it's perched up there in a way, and you can't really shake it loose. I can take my walking stick and push on it all the time, and it will ride up there without coming down.
I found one like that in the park area.
About like this was how big that one was.
See the tree there?
I saw that was
I don't know if everybody can see it or not. It's selfless promotion, I guess. This is the last marker we got, so it goes for $15 if anybody wants it for. So,
I want the whole set.
but it basically is just sometimes
There's
it's
4 of
a
them.
log that's been placed high up in the tree, like I said.
And again, when you look at
They
it,
range from
the ones
15
that
to
I
20.
know for myself that seem to be the most prevalent, if you're out in that area at night, the horizon that you can see of the lightness of the night versus the woods, when you're standing there, that is evident up there when at night. But again, who would look up there? Other than a crazy researcher trying to figure out if that had meaning, nobody. And again, without the scent, I can't believe that these critters walking down, foraging at night for food or whatever they do, would know to look up at that exact area without scent. And until Carrie brought it up, it was just, duh, I mean, why didn't we think of that already?
Have you guys had any interactions with any of the officials around where you go? Like state officials, game wardens, things like that?
I haven't.
I have. Yeah, you have.
Well, yeah, that one time you got us in trouble.
Back on Memorial Day weekend, we were at the other end of our research area, and apparently there's a new owner that owns some of the property back there. and his crew had come out and was putting up signs and stuff like that. And we wasn't on his property, but they went and called the game wardens on us. So they had to drive down this real crappy road to get down. And by the time they got to us, they weren't in a real good mood. And unfortunately, or fortunately, they've come up on me while I was doing Bigfoot research before, so they knew who I was. And they got down there and thought that they were coming up on a bunch of guys drinking and stuff. But for the most part, the game wardens around here, as soon as they see me, they're like, yeah, that's that crazy guy, just let him go on.
What did you tell the first time you encountered you?
I told them, well, first time they actually ever encountered me, me and Bighead was sitting on the road with a little fire belt listening for Bigfoot over at Skillyville. And he goes, y'all are looking for Bigfoot? I was like, yeah, look at the decal on the back of my truck. And he looked, and sure enough, I had my decal for MABRC, and he said, well, I can't say they're out there, but there's something out there. And that's as far as he'd go. I think a lot of those guys are afraid that they'll lose their jobs if they admit that, you know, something's out there. Just like I've been told there's no bear or mountain lions around here by them, and it's like, come on guys, I ain't stupid. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if there's some theories about what these markers may mean. We've seen pictures referring to different kinds of markers placed. What do you think they're trying to say?
Well, truthfully, we think they're territory markers. You know, this is my territory. Don't, you know, another troop or another Bigfoot. Over here in Skillyville, from the Highline power right away, you can actually see the first marker. When you get to it, you look across the road, you see another marker about 300 feet up. You get to it, there's another one, another 300 feet. So I think it's basically like a off-ramp sign, you know. You guys are walking on the power line right away, here's where you go, and it takes them up to a ridge line where they can hunker down in the rocks. You know, a lot of people think that the big X markers are do not enter. I think it's just a different type of territory marker. But truthfully, until we can actually study Bigfoot in the wild and see what they're doing, all we got is speculation.
So the kind of theory, just like a Bigfoot markers territory of a scrape or
I would say basically traffic signs on the highway, that's what they use them for. So.
We've done some research in my area because I have kind of a wide area that I research in about 4 different counties on a regular basis. And what we've noticed that like the X structures in each area are constructed differently. This goes back to what Darren was saying, that these are probably territorial markers. An X structure in one location is not made the same way as one in another location. And you look at them, that you can tell the difference. They don't look the same, even though they're the same type of marker. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. They're built differently, so that's probably passed on amongst that troop. So that troop will make them that way, this troop will make them another way. And if you're out in the woods and you can only guess at it, like Darren said, this is pure conjecture. But if you run into something that was made by somebody else, you recognize that and say, ooh, I might not want to go in there, I might get my butt kicked.
so it's to each other. It's not necessarily markers for humans to stay out. It's pretty much
Yeah, basically it's for each other. As far as humans go, you know, they'll do bluff charges, they'll throw rocks at you, they'll huff, they'll scream at you, you know.
Put trees across the trail.
Yeah, put trees across the trail. You know, if they don't want you in the area, they'll let you know, but as far as markers, it's always been my opinion, they don't, well, let me put it this way. we come across a marker one time, and we started paying close attention to it. And one night, me and 3 other guys decided to walk down to it, and it was pitch black dark, and we got down to it, and all hell broke loose. Something just probably 20, 30 feet away from us started shaking trees, screaming at us, and I was getting ready to turn around to tell the guys, you know, maybe we better go back up the hill. I realized I was by myself. They had already made it to the road. But, you know, I was paying special attention to this marker, and eventually they went and abandoned anything to do with it. So, you know, when you find stuff like this and you start paying attention to it, they usually abandon it and never come back to it. So, you know, I think they're like, well, they discovered that one, we'll go build something else somewhere else.
Who is the Eastern director, Eastern Oklahoma director?
Bushman.
Is there a family down around where the Grand River bends around Langley up there at the lake? I've been told there's a family down there where the river turns.
I couldn't hear you real well.
Where the river comes out of Glendale, like it's around.
One thing again I'd like to stress with the markers is that, you know, in my area, I've been researching it again, the same few thousand acres now for about 9 years. I had one what I call a signpost, again, laid up inside of the trees to stay vertical. With time, that weathered and that one fell down. First half of it fell down. 2 days later, it was propped back up again. And again, it wasn't me, it wasn't my research partner, it happened naturally. Then the backside also gave way and it hit the ground. Within 2 weeks, about 40 yards from it to the north, there was another new pointer that was put up in the same area, again 40 yards away, in another batch of trees. So again, going by what these guys say, I did it too. I focused on one marker for about a month and a half straight, and they never came back to it. They walked away from it. Nothing else was ever done. But if you notice them, document them, because they do change. Nature deteriorates, knocks them down. If you look around that area and want to know if they're still in that area and still active, you will find a replacement marker very similar to the one that fell down.
Anybody else?
Have you ever noticed any markers around trail cams?
Around trail cams?
You mean set up after the trail cam was put up?
I've been seeing some of that lately around the wind, where it's looking like it's like a stop sign.
Well,
Trail cam right over there.
yeah, I haven't seen any around trail cams, but there is a dentist down in Honubby that was building a cabin, and he was having all kinds of activity coming up there messing with his tools and stuff like that. So somebody told him to put motion sensing lights up. And basically, he come back, you know, after being gone for a couple of weeks, come back, and there was a line of rocks where the motion sensor would actually enable. Just a line of rocks. Now, could it have been a Bigfoot? Could have been a Bigfoot put that line of rocks there to, you know, let them know, hey, if you go any further, that light's going to come on. You know, could be guys coming up there and stealing his tools, you know.
What
But
I've been seeing, that's kind of what it looks like.
yeah, they just like, okay, there's a trail cam. But for the most part, whenever we put up trail cams, I don't even put batteries or a card in them. We kind of use them to funnel the Bigfoot to where we want them to. We'll have our camp here, we'll put a whole bunch of trail cams over here, and then we'll watch this way for the Bigfoot to come around this way. Now, do they know what a trail cam is? I really doubt it. But they've probably seen trail cams in the woods. Me and Dave and Roy and a couple other researchers went down by Stilwell, and we was on this overhang overlooking this valley, and a trail cam went off. And it looked like somebody turned on a dang house light in the middle of the woods. It lit up the whole place. So, you know, a Bigfoot realizes these boxes that people are putting on trees can light up. So, yeah, they know they're human-made, they're going to avoid them. So we use that to our advantage. We put all the trail cams on one side, and then we'll sit there and wait for them to come around this way. And it's been pretty successful. I've seen them do it quite a few times. But as far as the markers, I'll have to remember that next time I put some trail cams out, just kind of see what happens.
And I'm not sure what part of the country is that I've seen it going on, but it seems like I've been seeing it more lately. People posting pictures of these markers. Could be even a couple of them around one camera.
I found a marker one time in Chickasaw, and about 30 feet away was a big hive hanging down. I don't know if one had anything to do with the other, but I've always wondered about that.
Awesome.
So, do we have a question back over here?
Y'all ever tried to take down markers to see if they put it back up? Purposely destroying or removing?
Me and two other guys tried to take one apart, and the logs had been wedged in there so tight we couldn't even budge them. So when you find markers like that, I mean, it takes a lot of strength to do them, and I tend not to want to mess with their markers. And the whole reason for that is when I walked down to that one marker and it started getting real agitated that we were down there, I don't want to really reveal my hand to them that I'm paying real particular attention to their markers. I want them to think business as usual. You know, maybe they'll think, well, you know, they're not paying no attention to our markers and make a mistake and come out in front of me or something. So.
And again, I think the desired effect for all of us is we want them to get comfortable with our being out there. And you know, it'd be like if I came into your house and took something off from your wall and put it on the ground, you wouldn't be too happy with me.
Why go put it back up?
Well, yeah, but again, you know, then you're looking at these guys are a nuisance. I don't want to deal with them. I don't, you know, and that's the position I don't really want to get into my research area.
Well, right, that would be for both.
Yes, and I'm too fat and old, out of shape to outrun them, so I'd have to take a beating, and I don't want to take a beating.
Yeah, kind of to follow up on what he was saying, Skillyville is one of our research areas, and my blazer that I had at the time had a real distinctive squeak, and it got to the point to where every time we'd go down there and they would hear that squeak, they would come down off the ridge line and get close enough to us that usually we could spot their eye shine, or you know, they toss rocks at us. We even had a juvenile step right out in the open. Of course, there's two adults standing over here hiding in the underbrush. You could see their figures, but we think they was wanting to see what we do with that juvenile there. And you know, unfortunately, finally my blazer gave up the ghost, and I can go down there now and I don't get the same kind of activity I did when I had that squeaky blazer. So, you know, they trusted me. They hear that blazer and they'd be like, well, one, he's getting ready to leave some fruit here for us. So I had to stop doing that because they'd wait till I leave to come out and get the fruit. Yeah, but you know, it got to the point they'd hear that squeaky blazer and they'd come down to play. And we had quite a few great things happen down there at Skillyville because of that. Matter of fact, my son JR, he had the misfortune to go down there with me several times when we did stupid stuff, and we have what we call the Crybaby CD, and it's just 40 minutes of a baby crying. And we didn't make the baby cry. This was something we found on the internet. But we sat there in complete darkness. There wasn't no moon out, clouds, the whole 9 yards. So we start playing this, and we're sitting in the blazer, and off on the ridge line above us, you hear something just crash, bang, crash coming down the hillside. And about 75 feet down the road from us, the white Bigfoot steps out. And he's looking around for that baby, and then he sees the blazer. And it's kind of like in the movies, you know, when you see the monster don't get what he was wanting, you know, and he kind of kicks his feet and walks off. The Bigfoot just kind of looked at us and turned around and just headed off. And JR looked over at me and goes, "We ain't playing the Crying Baby CD no more." You know, so fortunately, he got old enough to move out and, you know, go start his own family. But then Izzy come along and was like, "Come on, Izzy, let's go." And now he's like, "I don't want to go do any more stupid stuff, Grandpa."
No guts, no glory.
So, anybody else got a question or?
Back to Mr. Savig.
Oh, damn, mister, don't do that, man, Randy.
Hey, Randy, you were talking about the tree up in there this big round. How high was that? And was the other ones you found 40 yards away, was it the same height and size or length or anything?
Again, it was comparative. I'm not, you know, I didn't take a tape measure tape. Most of them that I find that I feel are legit are generally between 10 and 12 foot up. And again, the key for me is when I go back to that area at night during one of our listening posts, if I can look up on the horizon and see where the night light comes in versus the forest silhouette and see it, then for me it gives a lot more weight of a deliberate placement. It wasn't a natural thing. But also by using the walking stick, I can't push them out of the trees. Even though they might be in branches, it almost seems like somehow they've wedged it in there where it won't come out. And I've used my walking stick to deliberately see, because again, I feel that if it falls from nature, it'll land and sit on top. And it should push pretty easy to get off from it.
So around that area, there was no tree with a broken limb?
No. This is something that was either picked up off from the ground and set up there. In fact, in one location, I found an old plank off from a barn setting up. You know, one of those wood rails that you'd have for the outside wooden fence. That was sitting up 10 foot in the air. And that was on top of a hill, so we couldn't even try to justify flooding putting that one up there.
This is all in your area that you researched?
This is in about a 10 square mile area that I researched in McDonald County, yes.
So in you guys' research, have you found that they travel out of that area?
Yes,
miles or months, or are they coming back there at the same time?
Well, I'm going to give that one to Big Jim. I use his philosophy and it's worked for me. He does a lot better job of explaining it than I do.
You always hear these people talking about the idea that these things are migrating for thousands of miles. They don't. We, in our areas, when the witnesses see something and report it to us, over time you start to build a picture of what is in the truth. The specific ones in the truth. We get what I like to call repeat offenders. They will see, you realize these people are seeing the same ones over and over and over in an area. We've seen it here in this area, haven't we?
Yeah. So they don't feed?
No.
That's the impression I get. If there's plenty of food, they're not going.
Yeah,
No.
their territory is probably, you know, at the most 100 square miles, maybe, you know.
They travel a circuit, and all primates do this. Chimps, gorillas, they do this. And what these things seem to do is they will go into an area for a day or two, hang around, they'll have a little, what I like to call a rest stop, an area where they hole up at. They'll break apart at night, where you'll have groups of 2 or 3 of them wander off, and they'll go forage. And after a couple of days, they leave. Well, they'll go maybe 5-10 miles down the road and do it again. And by doing this, they don't deplete an area of its food. And again,
You had noticed, you guys being out there, or you personally.
yeah, my primary research area, they travel through there on a circuit that takes about 4 weeks for them to complete. They'll be gone for 2 weeks. They'll be in my area, and my area seems to be the midpoint of this troop's range in terms of north and south. Then they will go north or south, and then they will eventually work their way back around. And we were looking at this, and we realized, well, it's the halfway point, and you could almost plot the sightings out on a map to figure out their travel routes. It's actually very interesting. But like I said, we have these repeat offenders, and it's really very interesting, but this is the same thing we see in other primates, which makes sense.
Yeah, basically here we've got about 6 different research areas, and they're all connected by the same high voltage power line right away. And one of these days when I got the manpower, we're going to drop a team at each one of those and see where they're at during those days. Like Big Jim says, they may stay a day or 2 in one spot, move on down. If there's plenty of food in a spot, they may stay 2 or 3 days. Memorial Day weekend last year, we were there for almost a whole week. Didn't have that much activity until the last night. That was because they were in other areas, and they just happened that last night to come down where we were. So, it's hit and miss. I can go out for 4 or 5 months to all my research areas and just alternate and miss them every time. And then I can go out there one night, and that's where they're at. So, but it's like I'm trying to remember how big 100 square miles is. Probably several hundred square miles.
I was going to say the ones out by the house, their total range is roughly 600 square miles. That's almost the equivalent of one county.
They go from here. They go pretty much from Tahlequah all the way down to almost Fort Smith, and that's their range. Because most of our reports around here are 1 mile within the high voltage power line right away. So, they do that route.
Have you encountered like an individual that you keep seeing, or a small waterway enclosed piece of land where that one just isn't going anywhere, he's got a great spot, he's not leaving?
Well, we see the white one. We see the white one all down through here. And it's my belief, and like I said, it's just an opinion really, we think he's the alpha. And we think that he's doing all this traveling between the subgroups, just checking on them. He's been spotted down just a few miles to the east of Salisaw, and he's been spotted over here at Tahlequah. He's been spotted quite a few times over here. Even back as far as 1996, he was actually spotted over here by one of our meat processing plants. And back then, they were basically just dumping the scraps out in a pit, and he'd come up and eat. And one report that really stands out about him is the family that owned the place, their boys heard something howling down in one of their abandoned silos. So they went down to check it out, and as they looked in the doorway of the silo, there was that white Bigfoot standing in there going, "Ooh," and then listening to the echo. So, he's been around since '96. I don't think that his color is because he's real old. I think, he's probably an albino, but yeah, just imagine the look on them boys' face when they look in there and that Bigfoot's having fun listening to his echo,
So you guys go out quite a ways into your gotta travel. I mean, I'm researching in urban areas, like around town, like, for example, Oklahoma City,
I'll take
found
this
right
one.
side of the city.
Okay, you don't have to go far out into these places. There are some right on the edge of our urban centers. I've got a research site right on the edge of Oklahoma City, literally. These things are quite content living right there because there is food there. There are people. People equal food. People generate trash. I took a sighting in Oklahoma City itself that was up a creek, and it intersected with Southwest 29th Street. No, Southeast 29th Street. And the thing was, the witnesses, there was a carload of them. And this was hard for me to discount because they were all last year medical students. These guys were all 1 year away from becoming doctors.
You said Southwest what?
Southeast 29th.
How far is that up from 40?
That's it, off of 40, no, it's nowhere near 44. It's near I-40 in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
There was a creek there, and these guys were driving down the road, going to a party. They look down, and they see this thing standing in the creek. And they're all trained medical students. They all know human anatomy. They all know that this thing is not human when they look at it. And they go up the road and turn around and come back, it's gone. And they were saying, they were trying to figure out, well, we don't know what it was doing. They had assumed that somehow this was some kind of elaborate prank, but it didn't look like it to them. Well, I go to the area, and I mean, most researchers would throw that report out due to where it was. Okay, but I get to this creek and I'm looking. Number one, that creek bank is from the creek bed itself up to the field that it went through. You probably add another 10 foot up on this ceiling here, and that's about how far down it was. If someone was going to hoax, they'd be running through the nice flat field right beside the road. Then I'm looking around. This creek, you can actually follow it in and out of town. And I look across the road, and lo and behold, there's a pizza place with a dumpster. I don't think it's there anymore. I think it got tore down. But I'm sitting there going, uh-huh. They will go into urban areas if they think they can get food. It's as simple as that. We see this with bears. We see this with deer. These things do this. And
Let me do this. You know where Sulphur is, right?
Yeah.
Sulphur, Oklahoma?
They got the Chickasaw National Park right up against Sulphur. Right there at the park entrance, they have a nursing home. After it gets dark, the staff will not go outside to smoke a cigarette. They have seen too many Bigfoot come out of the park and raid their dumpsters. And not only that, but like Big Jim was talking about the Pizza Hut, they have several creeks that come out of the park into Sulphur, and they all go up behind all the fast food places. And there's all kind of reports of the Bigfoot raiding those garbage cans. So I had the opportunity one time to talk to some of the people that worked at the nursing home, and I was told, you need to ask them, do they go outside to smoke at night? And just as soon as I did, they were like, dude, we don't go out even to dump trash after dark. Nobody goes out after dark. So.
Yeah, somehow people have got it in their heads that a Bigfoot won't enter an area if it can be seen, because they seem to think that these things are the size of brontosaurus or something. I was talking to a researcher, and we were talking about an area in Texas that had historical sightings, and I've uncovered some in that area since then. He said, well, how? It's been developed. And well, as I said, there's a creek there. They followed the creek in. It's as simple as that. He said, well, that creek, the strip of woods there, it's not even a fifth of a mile wide. I said, well, that's a fifth of a mile wide strip of woods. They can go down that and not be seen.
Black at night.
He said, well, it's developed on both sides. They're going through a housing set.
It's dark.
I said, it's dark, they can get down there. And I just kind of stopped for a second. I go, can a cow go down that creek and not be seen if a cow wanted to? Well, yeah. Okay, these things are about the same size as a big cow. They can go down that creek.
This young lady back here, she had a question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, is there any particular season that you guys have found more sightings?
Those times where there's less ticks and chiggers, because I'm not out there during them.
During the winter months is when I tend to find most reports, but you still got to stop and think about it. What's not on the trees in the winter? Right.
Your visibility into the woods is so much better in the fall, spring, and winter than it is any other time, to where they could be 20 foot off the road in the middle of the summer. You wouldn't see them, but you could catch them there in the winter time and when there's not foliage.
Yeah, an interesting thing that when we first got our thermals, we drive down the back roads, and you'd be surprised. There'd be 20 deer standing within 10 feet of the road. You wouldn't be able to see them in your headlights, but you know, with the leaves on the tree and everything, they'd all be standing right there beside the road. So you know, with the leaves on the trees, you can hide an army along the road and never be able to see them. So unlike these guys, when the leaves are down, you can see a long distance. That's when I really love being in the woods, is when it's cold, because man, you can see everything and there's no snakes.
No chiggers, no ticks. Yes.
That, if you're doing audio recording, that's when he loves it, because no bugs.
That's it.
Yes, ma'am. Well, back about a century ago, the average person lived to be about 55 to 60. Now, based on that assumption, since they don't have medical care and all that, I would say they're probably living to be 50, maybe 60.
That'd be old.
Yeah, and that'd be real old for them.
I would probably wager 30 to 40 is probably a good life expectancy.
Yeah.
If someone had a tuft of hair from a long time ago, how long would the DNA be good on it? Would it be depending on how it was taken care of, that kind of thing?
Well, you know, right now they're coming across these bones from these woolly mammoths that still has bone marrow, and they're able to extract DNA from it. And last I heard, they're trying to introduce that DNA into African elephants to produce.
It's about 20,000 years.
Yeah.
It falls apart.
So, you know, just how well it's taken care of, you know, that's what it depends on. So, the gentleman back there in the very back that had his hand up.
Does weather affect their movements, or does the moon phase have any effect on them?
One thing in my research that I found is when it's a full moon, you don't see them. It's almost like they know that they can be seen a lot easier with the full moon. For the seasons and the weather, for the most part, severe weather coming in, you know, there was a big storm coming in, it seems to just go blank. I mean, no activity. I think they're hunkering down under some bluffs or, you know, somewhere safe.
Cedar trees.
Yeah, cedar trees. So, you know, I think they sense these storms coming in because we've been having all kinds of activity on an expedition, and we got a bad storm coming in for one night. It just dies. Nothing's happening.
Seems like they really love it when the thermometer, the bottom of it, falls through it. When the colder it is, it seems like the better the activity we seem to have too.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
I would say, as far as noises go, they tend to sound more ape-like than they do anything else. They got whoops, screams, howls. Yeah, grunts, roars. So,
They basically fit in two categories. You know, the science has done a great job of helping me with understanding these vocalizations. One's a long call, and it doesn't mean long drawn out, it means how far can it be heard. Those are the ones that would primarily be with food,